Welcome to the ASKEM Studios podcast with Todd and Kelley Widows. This is our initial episode coming to you from Greenville, South Carolina. I try not to steal other people's lines, but we do another podcast here, and he says live at the ASKEM Studios, which drives me nuts because it's not the ASKEM Studios, it's ASKEM Studios. But anyways, I'm Todd, and, Kelley is right with me here. So, Kelley, can you go ahead and introduce yourself for those that do not know who you are?
So I'm Kelley Widows, and I am the better half of Todd and Kelley.
I would say better indeed. She is definitely not just a wonderful partner to have in life, but, just a great person all around. So with that said, and my, me propping up Kelley's ego here, introducing, ASKEM Studios. This is a wedding videography business, though we do other work as well. But we started back in 2016, primarily focusing, though, on weddings since, 2019? So just shy of the pandemic, we had started out. Right. So, and I think that's probably a good place to start out this morning. So, we're talking about, how we got started. So, Kelley and I, we had been doing some nonprofit work. As well as working with, some other small businesses. And I really just started to navigate towards seeing the wedding market. And so when we launched, like I said, that was 2019. Kelley, what were your initial thoughts when I first came to you about weddings?
So I think you had said, I think we're going to start filming weddings, and I was like, okay, great, you have fun with that.
Right. So
thinking that it was just going to be something you were going to do, and then all of a sudden it was that I was going to be learning the ropes and learning how to film and all of the ins and outs of videography. So but yeah, I think initially I was kind of like, okay, sounds good, but it just grew so quick. I don't think neither one of us anticipated how fast our wedding business would grow.
Well, I don't know about quick, because it took about 6 months of using stock video footage and creating graphic design work to promote the business. And then, we didn't have any leads at all. And at the time, I was still working in the printing industry. I had worked in the printing industry for over 20 years. And I was at work one morning, and somebody had sent me a message on Instagram. We at the same time had spoke to one of Kelley's coworkers, and they had someone that was a family, a relative of theirs in their family that was getting married. And so Kelley was like, "Well, would you be okay with us doing your wedding for free?" And, just to get the exposure. And so we had that date already set for this free wedding. And then I was at work, and I got a message on, I think it was a Wednesday. And, the wedding was coming up that Saturday for the free one. And it was somebody from Northern Virginia, because we were living in Richmond, Virginia at the time. And they were getting married in Charlottesville. And so, I responded what's your time frame? And not knowing anything about weddings at that point, their wedding was from like 11 to 2. It was something real short. And I didn't know at the time that it was Spanish speaking only. So I had no interpreter. And luckily we had someone from the church that we went to, that we paid $50 or something like that to go along and interpret for me. And so I had this, wedding to put together that paid $500. But I had no clue what the heck they were saying, and I had no clue what the heck I was doing. And even though I had been doing some work with, the nonprofits and all that, I knew how to video. I just didn't know what I was doing in a wedding setting. And so I left the wedding, and I called Kelley because I was trying to get over to Powhatan, Virginia, for the other wedding that was started, I think, at 3:00 or something like that.
I think it was later in the evening, but yeah, you were definitely rushing back.
And I was like, oh my God, I was like, Kelley, you were going with me on this thing. And I think that's really how the whole thing started. And then our second wedding or third wedding after that was in Was that Powhatan as well? That was at the Delwood. That was Kristen and Richard.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what were your initial takeaways from like that free wedding, the free wedding that was not necessarily a free day, that we did?
I think my initial thought was, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think, as when people go into, at least for me, when I was going into the wedding day, it's just kind of like, okay, we're just going to be pointing a camera and, and videoing and, not realizing like one, how fast the day moves and how quickly you have to, being in like a bunch of different places so quickly. I think that was one of the first things that I took away from it was, wow, this is a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and I think I realized that from that first part of the day, whenever I was doing it solo. And so that was one of the reasons why I reached out to you that day. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, there's no way I'm doing this by myself. And I almost fell into a pool. It was a whole mess. There was a lot of stuff that could have went wrong that day. Luckily, that did not. But I mean, I kind of
wish I had seen you almost fall into a pool. I wish I'd been there for that one.
Well, they had these little globes, these little glass globes around the pool that had candles in them. And luckily, I heard my foot clink one, and I looked down, and I was literally like right on the edge because I was so focused on the LCD screen on the camera that I wasn't aware of like where I was at, So, but I mean, with those initial thoughts from like that first wedding that we did together, like what were your expectations? After that, because we were slowly booking some work.
So I think after we did the first wedding for, my coworker, and then, we were really fortunate. We're fortunate with all of our brides, but, I think Kristen and Richard just made it so easy. Like, they really just made us feel so comfortable and, really feel a part of their day. That I think at that point we realized that, having personal interaction with the couples, I think made the day not only better for us, but better for them as well. And I feel like the quality of video that we're able to provide, because we have some sort of connection with all of our couples, I think has really helped make our videos stand apart from maybe some of the other ones that I've seen done.
Right. And I think that's a good segue, like kind of into what we wanted to talk about today. So, one of the things that we try to make sure that we're very mindful of is people's budgets. So if we're giving advice to couples, because we've done so many weddings now, and whether it's the consultations that you and I do together, we always try to be very transparent with people. So like whenever you're, we were talking about this a little bit earlier this morning. So what are the budgets, expectations, like whenever you're looking and you go to a site, maybe they have the pricing, maybe they don't. Maybe you find out that they're $5,000 and you're like having sticker shock, So like, what are some of the things that, you could advise some of the couples that, that may not know, walking into a wedding?
So I think that whenever people sit down to plan a wedding, whether or not you're using a planner or you're doing it yourself or you're working with family or whatever, I think everybody always starts out with, how much can we afford? And they kind of work out a budget, and then they work out, okay, what are my must-haves? What are the things that I definitely want to have? And then from there, you kind of have to determine where you're going to spend your money. And so it's definitely a tricky, avenue to pursue and to kind of navigate and things like that. I think our experience has definitely been that and I hope that the brides and, the grooms can take away this point is that if you're really willing to put in a little bit of work, you can find vendors that will work within your budget. They may not necessarily be the ones that you're going to find like on wedding sites or necessarily like, Facebook groups or Instagram. I guess Instagram doesn't have groups, but you may not necessarily, I don't know that much about social media.
Well, full disclosure for those that are listening, Kelly does not even actually have an Instagram account. So all the marketing that we're doing, Instagram, TikTok, Love Stories TV, any place that you can find ASKEM Studios to watch our videos, that is all solo push just on my end. Yeah. So because Kelly has no technologically no, she's not very versed in that. So
well, whatever. We all have our skill set. That's not mine.
Well, and Kelly's skill set definitely is the consultations. But anyways, to get back to the,
sorry, yeah,
that's all right.
So I think that when you're looking in in those places, you're definitely going to find great vendors. There's no doubt about it. And and what their price point is, I'm not saying that they're not worth that amount of money. I mean, everybody has to value what their time and their product is worth. They have to determine that on their own. But for people that, definitely need to say, hey, I can only afford this much, they may have to have a conversation with vendors, and some vendors will definitely be open to that. So I want to make sure that brides and grooms know that there's nothing wrong with, sending an email or a message and saying, hey, this is my budget. Is this something that you could possibly work around? The worst that they're going to say is going to be no.
Right. Well, and I want to interject too, like with our pricing, there are many brides that have come to us and say, hey, we absolutely love your work. We love your style. This is what I'm working with. And I don't think there is one couple that we've ever had that we've not worked with, and we've not worked with their budget. And so it really comes down to asking the right questions, and maybe there is a point of swallowing your pride a little bit and saying, hey, I don't, this is what we can afford. I'm not saying that it's prideful to feel that way. What I'm saying is a lot of times, people have good hearts that maybe
I would say comfort zone. And I think, like we were just talking to a bride, actually earlier today, and she was just saying, she's like, I just don't want people to feel like I didn't value what they were doing.
Right.
And I can just say, speaking on behalf of, of us, that I don't ever look at somebody saying, hey, this is how much I can afford as devaluing me. I don't see it as that way. I see it as them being realistic about what, basically meeting them where they're at.
Right.
I think that is, so important. I've always loved that expression, meeting people where they're at. Like, I think, in Christianity, that's so important. We always want to meet people where they're at. And I think that, in business, I think that's important too, is that, we have that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And I definitely think, piggybacking off of that, the right questions, being able to say, or like we just said, being able to say, like, hey, this is what I've got to work with. Is there any way that you may be willing to work with me? Now, obviously, Kelly, you're pretty stingy whenever it comes to shopping. So you're definitely always shopping around for the best price. And that doesn't even say
I don't
that.
know why you say that. I only go to like 4 different grocery stores to get our groceries. Well, I think what you're talking about.
I think a lot of that has to do with current climate of the economy, but we're going to leave that out of the show. But anyways, I mean, and plus the size of our family, and that's the other thing I forgot to mention too at the beginning, like ASKEM Studios, like it's an acronym for our kids' names. So we have 5 kids, our boy is the oldest. Luckily it's an A. And luckily we had, luckily we had 5, because otherwise it would have been Scum Studios. So it would have been pretty weird, but or even shorter. So, but anyways, like I think that you're pretty stingy when it comes to like shopping around, personally. And so couples, do your homework. You may find someone that's just starting out, or you may find someone that's very overpriced for what you're looking for. And I think that really, having those things in, that set you apart with your price point, asking the right questions. Is the audio included? Am I getting a certain amount of speeches, or am I getting all the speeches? What are some of the common questions that we get that you think that would be covered? Because we were told in our consultations normally take around 30 to 45 minutes with a couple. And so
that's just because you talk a lot.
Well, I do, but we're also told we're very thorough,
Yes.
and I've been a very strong proponent, and you can see this on our website at www.askemstudios.com for the shameless plug, that, we're very transparent about our pricing. We don't hide stuff. We want couples to know, because that's what we would want, as a couple.
That's our preference.
So,
but
right. And I understand.
There's nothing wrong with people saying, hey, you have to request there's nothing wrong with that either.
So long story to get to my question here is, what are the right questions or some questions that, couples who are getting married for the first time, or even if they're getting married after being divorced, should be asking?
So I think, well, you and I, we actually have a questionnaire that we, go over with our couples. I think that helps lead them into questions, but I think a lot of the times we end up asking them questions that enables them to be like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. So one of the ones I think that surprises them the most is when we start talking about audio, and we explain to them like how important it is to have, clear audio, and that the system that we use is actually using, separate microphones aside from what is used on camera. So I think just asking that question, like, are you going to actually clip in audio into my highlight reel? A lot of couples are not necessarily saying, is my entire ceremony included? That's not, I don't think all videographers are offering that as an option either. It's kind of like, I always call it the old school, video is, what, we grew up having.
Full disclosure, we're 40, so we're not that old. So I don't want to sound like, like we're wheeling a cart around at a wedding, which we have seen one time from another vendor.
Hey, I liked the cart.
And I like them, and you like the idea of the cart, and you like the idea of the fanny pack, and I hate all of the above. So,
the fanny pack has saved us many, many times.
It has, in my behest, as much as I hate the look of the fanny pack, and I fight the idea that I'm 44, Kelly's 43, and that we're not in our roaring.
Dude, you're just totally
20s.
calling us out.
I know. I think that, with asking the right questions is like getting to know the personality of the couple. So like, you're bringing people into your day that, you've never met before, like taking the time for them to take the time to get to know you, number one, like for us, asking how they met, asking about their love story, what's most important to them, those things. That way we're truly, as much as they're investing in us, we're investing in them. Because really, you think about it, you could bring in someone that's cocky and arrogant into your wedding day, and it can ruin your whole day. And you've been planning for 2 years to put this wedding together, and one vendor experience can upset the whole apple cart. And we dang well don't want to be those people. So, but I think that's that goes hand in hand with asking the right questions. It is, getting to know your vendor. So do you want to?
Yeah. So I think, asking where, it's just from a video standpoint, like asking where you're going to be positioned, like during the ceremony. I think those are important things. I mean, I think we always tell our couples that, we are not the videographers that are going to be up in your, ceremony space, and we're not going to go behind you and things like that. Like, that's not our style. There are other places that do, and there are couples that want that. But if that's something that you definitely don't want, then that's definitely a question you should be asking. Finding out like where their cameras are going to be positioned, making sure that they're getting the angles that you definitely want, so that, that they're getting the groom's face as the bride is walking down the aisle. So I think that's a question that kind of gets overlooked quite a bit. Timeline, I think often we're just like, so people are asking us what time we're going to get there. I think that timelines are often overlooked and, are not given the appropriate attention that is needed for them,
or allowing the proper time. So if you have 9 bridesmaids and your ceremony starts at 4:00, and you don't have your hair and makeup wrapping up until you don't start your hair and makeup until 11 a.m. Well, you can already tell right there that it's going to be a tight day, that you're going to be running up against the clock, and you're not going to have the flexibility to do everything, especially if you want to throw in a first look, a first touch, a first reveal with the dad, a first reveal with the bridesmaids, and then, maybe a first reveal with your kids, so those are things that I think you nailed a very vital point, is the importance of getting a timeline structured early. That way your vendors can know accordingly. I mean, for us, normally we ask the question, how many bridesmaids or how many groomsmen are in your bridal party? And we do that because normally we both, in our experience, just from the weddings that we've been able to do over the last 3 years, we can normally tell when, the hair and makeup's going to end. So normally that's whenever we can gauge our arrival time for that second and third package, because we know what amount of time we need. We like to ask when the photographer's getting there, because we work hand in hand with the photographer the day of. And the importance of that vendor relationship, of being able to work together fluidly, to create a symbionce, of being able to work, or a symbiont, I'm making words up now. But
AJ has his SATs on Tuesday. Have you been studying?
Yeah, I've been studying for him because I'm going to end up taking the SATs to see what I score at. So, but anyways, I mean, it's nice to be able to, have that structure ahead of time. And so those are some of the things with asking the right questions. And, timeline, you're probably right. It is probably undervalued. But I think even for vendors, having that timeline early is important, because, if you're getting the timeline like 2 days before the wedding, that's a little bit of then it's, in the planning stage, because we like to be pretty thorough. So whether it's Kelly and I doing the wedding, or, we do have our teams, so we have 2 other teams, and we like to, plan accordingly. And, and so I think that, having all the information we can have up front is vital, not just for us, but for the couple as well. So, I mean, what do you think, though, in the sense of getting to know the couples, like how important is that chemistry out of the gate?
Yeah. So when we first started doing this, we would come to the weddings and things like that, and the photographer already knew everybody. And I always told you, I'm so jealous, because the photographer gets this engagement, shoot with the couples before we do. So they already have a good feel of their personalities. So I think that's when we really said, hey, when we're doing these consultations, we need to do an initial consultation, but then let's do a follow-up, a couple weeks before as well. And
sometimes a follow-up to the follow-up, a week before, just because they all run together.
Yeah. So it depends. But I think it gives us the opportunity to kind of get an idea of, somebody's personality. So I think for us, I love to hear about what our couples maybe do for a living, or how they met. And I especially like to hear, if the groom maybe a little bit camera shy, or maybe more on the private side and things like that, just so that when we're going into the day, we know how to best pull out the best possible elements of their personalities. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate I get to spend some time with the guys on the day of. Todd's usually with with the bride and all of the girls, and then I get to hang out with the guys and help them with the boutonnieres and all that stuff. And I always love, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes those guys can really pick at me, and I'm just like, dude, really? There was the one that totally messed with me, because he's like, give it a toss, give me the ring, a toss here. And, I think I tossed it, it was a box, right. It was an actual ring. And, he pretended to drop it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, freaking out. And, but they thought that was funny, and I didn't find it funny.
Well, and I think that, obviously that's not a bad, thing. I think it's probably their way of nervously trying to get to know you as well, and so, I mean, and normally that first 30 to 45 minutes of the day, it's normally kind of like a warming up process, and warming up with the couple, even though they've talked to us, but also warming up with the other vendors. Other vendors have had bad experience with other vendors. Sometimes that can jade their overall experience with one type of vendor. And, we definitely like to make sure that go out of our way to let everybody know that we're, working together with them. I mean, but we're real laid back to begin with, I think. In our early days, we had our squabbles, privately.
We are married.
Yeah. So it's not always roses and sunshine over here, but, so we do have our disagreements on the day of, but ultimately, we're professional. We keep that hidden. So I don't know, may have just pulled the rug out from everything right there. So if
you're like, did I really sign that contract?
Yeah, they're gonna be fighting there. No, it's not like that, but so, but
mostly like you want me to carry stuff, and I'm like, dude, you go to the car and get it.
So, but I mean, like having the conversations with the couples about like our miking process, so like when it comes to first looks or, first touches, if the bride and groom are facing opposite directions, one microphone isn't going to cut it, so what we like to talk to the couples about in the process is that, ahead of time before you're getting into your dress, we like to mic the dress. Number one, it gives us the best audio. But number two, it gives me a really cool heartbeat sound whenever your heartbeat, when your heart's beating out of your chest coming down the aisle, very faintly on the video. But, but no, anyways, I mean, we like to capture the best audio all around. So, like during a ceremony, like you had mentioned, this is where the cameras are going to be. So we like to try to talk to, the photographers ahead of time, say, okay, where are you going to be at? So that we can adjust accordingly. So we're working together. Or, if we're miking up, the groom, the officiant, and the bride, that we've got a fourth source of audio available if there's letter readings from individuals. Or, if not, then we're using the DJ's audio as a backup to everything. Just because I'm anal retentive and I'm always worried about something going wrong. And with the 73 weddings we did last year, like that definitely like was one in itself that, I was like, okay, we need a good structured environment. But I'm going off the beaten path here from getting to know the couple to getting to know the ins and outs. And that's for another show at a different time. But
yeah,
so if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's looking to retain services, I know we talked a little bit earlier about the, finding a budget friendly, option. If you could give one piece of advice, to a couple that's, trying to find somebody, what would you say?
So I think, don't be afraid of somebody that maybe has an experience. Just because someone has like 300 weddings, under their belt or whatever, does not necessarily mean that they're the best fit for you. So don't be afraid to go with someone that might be a little bit more inexperienced. But definitely make sure that, what their work is reflecting is what you want. Because there are tons of different styles, for video, just as there are tons of different styles for photography. So just make sure that you're doing your research and things like that. And also, when all is said and done, just kind of go with your gut. Like, whoever you feel the most comfortable with, is probably going to be the best fit for you. And then don't be afraid, to ask, hey, is this an option? This is, where I'm at. This is how much I can afford. What services can you provide me, that meet this budget? There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing to be ashamed of. We all have limitations, especially financially. There's nobody that doesn't. So those would be probably like my biggest things in regards to budget.
Mine would be to have fun the day of. Your day is going to go very fast. Enjoy every moment. You're not going to realize how fast your day is going to go. And then by the time you get out of the ceremony, I don't know how many times I hear, as the couples are walking down the aisle from the mic that I have from the groom, I'll hear him say, oh my goodness, that was fast, or, it went so quick, or the bride will say that. So enjoy every moment, because realistically, at the end of the day, even though like you may have a time frame, a time schedule, people trying to get you here, get you there, ultimately it's your day. So if you need to slow down and, to reduce anxiety, if you need to slow it down to just take in a moment, then, it is your day. By all means, don't be afraid to say that, so, but I mean, have fun, because you only get married, on your wedding day, most, is one day, some are obviously remarried and blended, but every experience is new, is my point. So enjoy that moment, because you only have that one new experience once. So, I think we're probably going to land the plane here because we have another phone consultation that we're coming up on that we have to do. But anyways, so we just want to thank everyone that's, supporting us and listening to us. We're trying to make sure that we're definitely having the people that we're working with get to know us more behind the scenes. So that's why you're seeing more of the Facebook stories from like behind the scenes the day of. The podcast is another example. And we just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can do to set ourselves apart to, for couples to get to know us. Luckily we have a very busy year this year. We have 2 weddings coming up this weekend alone, one here in South Carolina, and then we have another one in Virginia the same day. And so, we definitely have a very busy May coming up. I think it was 16 weddings in May alone.
I have no idea. A lot.
So it's a lot. But, we're going to do this every week. We're going to bring this to you every Wednesday. Kelly, do you have any closing remarks as we land the plane here?
I don't really have any closing remarks. I would just say that, we would love to hear from you guys too. So if you have questions or, there's a topic that you would want us to kind of talk about from, our experiences with weddings, it doesn't necessarily have to be about videography, but we'd be happy to kind of share our experiences and the knowledge that we have that we've gained over the last couple of years. We just want you to know that we're a resource for you, and we want to be here to help guide you through this process.
Yeah, and speaking with other vendors is something that we're going to do as well. So this isn't just a podcast strictly about wedding videography. We're talking about weddings in a whole, and so we want to highlight some of the other vendors that we've worked with. Get to know them. I want to reach out to some other venues. Highlight the venues as well, so we can get to know. We have some venues coming up here in South Carolina and Virginia that we're going to be at, or our team members are going to be at, that are new this year. And so I think helping to promote those businesses as well. The wedding industry is a small knit community, and it's a family. And so you're going to find that, a lot of vendors know each other. And I think just helping to create an exposure within itself for couples is only going to benefit the couple at the end of the day. So anyways, that is this week's episode for the ASKEM Studios Wedding Film Podcast. I may drop that film thing. It's a long title. So, but anyways,
well, you're wordy anyway.
Yeah, man. So, anyways, that's our episode for this week, and we look forward to bringing you another episode next Wednesday. And make sure you share this out. Follow us on social media. We're ASKEM Studios on Facebook, ASKEM Studios Wedding Films on Instagram. I think it's ASKEM Studios on TikTok. And we also are on Love Stories TV. We have a YouTube channel, and obviously visit our website. If you are interested in booking with us, you can see examples of our work. Also, you can find this podcast episode on the website. And that website address is www.askem, ASKEM Studios, all one word, .com. It's www.askemstudios.com. As Kelly rolled her eyes at my bad joke. So anyways, that's today's podcast, and we look forward to speaking with you guys next week. So say goodbye, Kelly.
Goodbye, Kelly.
Goodbye.